Thank you. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Haley Bohal. Today, as LJ said, this is Proposal Development Workshop number 2, Proposal Research Strategy. I'm joined with my colleagues Keith Aspinall and Jamie Burns to discuss this today. Keith, next slide. We're going to talk about the competitive intelligence overview process, analyzing the research landscape, the importance of reviewing your proposal, and then, of course, we have time for questions at the end, and you're welcome to use the chat box throughout as well.
All right. Thanks, Haley. So to get started, I'm going to give an overview of what is competitive intelligence. Before I get into that, one thing I want to make clear is if you were on the any of the GRASP presentations last week or plan to listen to most of these sessions, you will be getting a lot of information, and the overview that I'm giving about competitive intelligence is meant to be kind of a broad overview, and it may be a lot of information, but I think it all kind of makes sense in a lot of the work that you may be doing in other facets. But when we look at competitive intelligence, what do you think of? So there's, I think it's an interesting set of words that people draw some theories on of what they think maybe we're hackers. Jamie and I are the CI, now strategic intelligence team, or maybe they think we're spies or work with cool, interesting visualizations. When actually what we do is we sit in an office and we gather data information and we transform it into intelligence. So that's actually what competitive intelligence is. It's the ethical collection and analysis of data and information to inform decision making. In our role, we are providing these analyses to stakeholders, whether they be leadership, faculty members, or whatnot. And really what our process is about moving from data, organizing it into information, and then analyzing that information in order to provide intelligence, which are actionable insights that really drive decision making. On the right side there, you can kind of see what our core principles are in developing our work. We're looking to be strategic, things that advance the institution, advance our work. We're looking to be unbiased. We're not looking to have a specific answer. We're not going in and looking to justify something. We're looking where the information guides us. We're looking for measurable. Quantitative data is good. Qualitative data is also good, but to have that data backup is helpful to underpin our conclusions. We're looking for actionable intelligence. And what that means is not something that's just nice to know, but something that informs our decision-making, informs other people's decision-making, and also gives them a pathway to that implementation. And the last step is repeatable. We're looking to develop processes that allow us to look at similar sources quickly in the same way. So when you get, I think the lens that you want to be listening to this presentation about, or particularly my part, is thinking about your sponsors and the programs that you're interested in. So how do we develop processes that are repeatable to prepare for proposal writing? So a lot of this work that we're talking about today is before you even start writing a proposal. It's really in the planning phase to identify the proper opportunities. So to provide more context on competitive intelligence, it has its roots in industry, in the private sector, where industries of different types are all competing against each other. They're competing in the marketplace. They're wondering how their products fare and how they appeal to the consumer. Who are their vendors? What does the supply chain look like? What do their customers want? And all of this is a competitive landscape, and companies getting into these issues and competing and getting insight onto what's happening in their industry, I think all kind of makes sense. But how do we take this approach and apply it to academia, particularly in the area of research? And it actually maps pretty well. Science is collaborative, research can be collaborative, but there's still competition for research funding or for any kind of sponsored project funding. But the market is really what those funding opportunities are that you're seeking to obtain. Your product is your research expertise or the expertise that you offer to the sponsor. Your industry is the research field or your area of focus. Vendors are really the assets that you have access to, whether they're partners here at the university or facilities, other partners that you can bring in that make your idea stronger. And the customers are, of course, the sponsors who are providing the money. So we do see there's a mapping here. And so this may seem a lot. It's like, so still, how am I going to engage in competitive intelligence when I'm doing? So I have some good news. You can keep calm because you're probably already doing it. If you're involved in research, you obviously have an area of expertise and you have a research field that you are engaged in. And staying on top of those areas and knowing what's going on, you're doing some form of competitive intelligence to maintain that kind of awareness. So what we'll be talking today is mainly how to apply some processes to funding opportunities and sponsors to give yourself a competitive edge when you actually get to the proposal writing process. So then how do you do this on your own? So what I'm going to go to is it is not magical. It's not some super secret. It is very much a common research analysis practice that you can incorporate into your work before you start writing the proposal. And I think that's the big thing to take away from the next couple of slides is none of this is, again, unexpected of what you see. When you get engaged in a project, there's a planning process where you're collecting information and data, you're analyzing it, you transform it into something that you can use. So again, when we get into the planning phase, what is your motivation? Obviously, the motivation for this series is writing a good proposal so that you can get funding. You're creating a checklist, and that's part of what this process is creating a framework and creating a process to understand what sponsors and programs are looking for before you start writing. And so this entire process is about developing that. You're defining your key questions, you're understanding your sponsor and I think your audience. And I think that's a big deal is because you don't want to get to a solicitation first. You want to understand what the sponsor wants. And I think Jamie is going to be going into greater detail on this. And then the last one is manage expectations. We as analysts have to manage the expectations of our stakeholders. In your role as a researcher, part of that managing expectations is what are you capable of doing now and what do you need to prepare yourself for in the future. So you may come across a good opportunity that maybe is designed for senior faculty or more experienced faculty. And managing our expectations means kind of saying, okay, I'm interested in that. How do I get that and become more competitive for that? And so that's part of the process. So the collection, I think this is standard. You're identifying your key questions, you're gathering the information, you're doing that research, but then you also need to know when to stop, particularly in this process when you're looking at the backgrounds of sponsors and programs, because you actually need to get to writing the proposal. There at the bottom, human intelligence can be very important. And again, Jamie will go in more detail on this. We've incorporated more of this into our work in the last year or two in talking to people because there will be insights and information that you can't glean from, web searches and those types of sources. So the next step is the analysis, which is an iterative process with collection. So you're going to go back and forth on that. During this process, you need to both remain objective about the information you're collecting, but also remain focused on what your objective is, and that's understanding a sponsor or a program. And in that process, you're identifying patterns and themes that you can incorporate into your proposal or just into your overall research strategy on what you would like to get funded. And as part of this entire process, you're keeping in mind your key questions, and they may evolve. You may add some new ones, but it's all part of that process of then also, developing methodologies and tools that you can analyze data. So this becomes part of that process of creating a repeatable process. It will get better with experience. You'll find new ways to incorporate information and know what you're looking for. If you identify a sponsor that you want to work with, what is the best way to understand what they have funded previously and what they're looking for. And again, this is a broad overview. This is meant to encourage you taking the time to engage in this process before you get to proposal writing. And as I said, Jamie will go into more detail specifically on how to incorporate this into your work and the approaches that we take when we're doing this for opportunities. And of course, the last thing is it helps you identify gaps and weaknesses that you may have. And the next step is the transformation. So when you have done all that analysis, what are the networks and connections that you're making from the data that you've seen and from the research that you've done to understand the program and sponsor? And that's developing your actionable findings so that you can go forward and really informs whether maybe an opportunity is a good fit for you or what you need to add to it. And all of that informs your story, because the proposal writing, you're telling a story, you're convincing a sponsor that you're a excellent fit for what they want done and what you would like to do. And that becomes part of what some other sessions in this series will go over. So again, that's a very broad overview. You still may have questions about exactly how do I implement this and where is this in the process. So again, this is competitive intelligence, and what we're talking about today and what Haley will talk about in terms of proposal review. These are all things you do before you start writing a proposal. These are developing an understanding of sponsors and which ones are a good fit for you, which programs are the best fit for you. So you're not reacting to it when a solicitation comes out, but have some plan of what you're looking for. And so this overall value of competitive intelligence is what we see there in the back is time. You're investing some time up front so that you can invest good time in the proposals and the programs that are a good fit for you. And so this value is again, kind of just recaps what the value and the purpose of this is. It helps your decision making on what are good opportunities, what are not, what are your what are good opportunities, what are things you need to address. Maybe coming across a program that requires either partnerships or interdisciplinary collaborations, and knowing that going in, so you need to develop those partnerships. I address opportunities that may be a good fit now versus in the future, and all of these things gives you can give you a leg up, because you can better invest your time in those things that make you more competitive for a proposal. We do have, if there's any quick questions here, I can address them, but otherwise I will hand off to Jamie, who will actually walk you through some of the steps that that's an overview of the process, but again, that focuses on really understanding your sponsors and the programs that are the best fit for you.
All right, I'm not hearing any questions, so I'm going to go ahead with this section. So as Keith has mentioned, he's given us a really good broad overview, a nice foundation. We're all kind of speaking the same language about competitive intelligence now. And so I'll dive into more of the tactics. How do you really go back to your desk and do this process? And so we'll look at how you analyze the research landscape. There are 4 key takeaways for this section. So the first is we're going to talk about how you give your proposal a competitive edge. We'll talk through, how do you learn about your competition? How do you align your proposal to fit the sponsor and the program goals? And then I'll pass it to Haley, who will talk about how serving as a reviewer and having your own review is really strategic. And so I'm going to give you a lot of information, just like Keith just did. And I know some of it is going to seem like overkill. It's not, I promise. But if you really take away nothing, it is that this message right here, understanding what the sponsor has awarded in the past or wants to fund in the future can give your proposal a competitive edge. And so I'll walk through exactly how you can know what a sponsor has awarded, what they want to fund. But this is really the key message. So we'll go through 6 steps to grow competitiveness, and I'll just pause for a second to let you read through these 6 steps. And I do want to highlight that step 4 is in the ASU maroon very purposefully. that's where we'll spend most of the time today. It's where you're going to get a lot of really good competitive intelligence and information is from analyzing those previous awards. So the first step, is really you're going out to do your research and you are trying to figure out, you think you have a sponsor in mind, but how do you know what that sponsor wants to fund? So that's our first step. And really, to know what a sponsor wants to fund, there's 3 methods you can go through, and we'll walk through those here in a minute. As a broad overview, sponsors have their own specific aims, they have their own objectives, they have a mission. And if you can highlight in your proposal how the research that you're wanting to do will actually help the sponsor achieve their own aims, that's really competitive. And so how do you find out what a sponsor wants to do? You can look at their strategic plan, their budget, or press and media. And I will say, I've just added on the right side of the screen some screen caps for strategic plans for a variety of sponsors. And that's because everything we're going to talk about in this session is sponsor agnostic. You can do this for any sponsor. And so just to give you an idea, you can see the strategic plans exist for, it's not just NSF, it's a variety of sponsors. All right, and so when you look at a strategic plan, what should you be looking for? So I've just included the table of contents for the NSF strategic plan. And really what I would recommend is looking at their mission and vision broadly, just to understand, make sure you really kind of get what the sponsor wants to do. And then look at their strategic goals and objectives. That'll give you a really good idea of what the sponsor really wants to do over the next couple of years. Typically, these strategic plans are in about 4-year increments. So give you that planning for 4 years at a time. And then you'll also want to look at the budget. Of course, when you read through the strategic plan in that first step, everything is going to be important. All of it will be, equally important. But when you look at the budget, you'll get an idea of what's really more important, where they're putting their money. And so that'll give you an idea of kind of what the sponsor is truly prioritizing based on funding. And that can kind of give you, insight into what areas they're prioritizing, how your research might fit with those areas over the next couple of years. And then press and media, and I have to emphasize, this is so important. Looking at a sponsor, following them on LinkedIn, Twitter, setting a Google News alert, going to the sponsor's website and subscribing to their newsletter, any way you can follow them online is worth it. We've actually even had a proposal or a couple of proposals that came out of someone finding an announcement on Twitter. So these things turn into real dollars for real research. And so, staying up to date with the press, the media, the news for your sponsor is just so important. So, if there's big updates, big changes, things, that they just want people to know about. So our next step is, you understood the sponsor. Now you need to, drill in a little bit deeper to understand a program. So where can you get information about a program? The best place to get information about a program is from the program page. I've got just an example of a program page here, but they might, rearrange the parts a little differently, but they typically have this information available. And so first step is the news section. Just as you want to follow sponsor news, you want to follow news about the program you're interested in. If there are deadline changes, if the program's shifting in any sort of way, thematically, this is where that'll be, and you'll want to be aware of that because it'll impact your proposal. And then, of course, you'll want to talk to program managers. We would highly recommend talking to program managers. And that's because the program managers, they manage the program. They know what they want to fund. They know what they're looking for. And if you reach out to them, preferably by email at first, is what we've heard. They like that as kind of a starting point for contact. If you reach out via email and just, set up a conversation, say, this is what I'm researching. You can ask them, is this a good fit for a program? Maybe it will be. Maybe they'll direct you to another program. And again, even if they pivot you somewhere else, that's a good investment of your time to have made that initial contact, so you're not kind of wasting time later on an entire submission to a program that might not be a good fit. So talking to a program manager can just give you a leg up right from the beginning. Other information on a program page you'll want to pay attention to is the synopsis of the program. And this is just, reading through it, making sure that what you think the program funds is what it really funds, kind of really understanding the program. And then webinars and awards. And I'll come back to that in a few slides on how exactly you can incorporate the information from webinars and awards databases into your pre-research for your proposal. But just so you know, they're typically found on program pages, those bits of information. All right, so you've learned about the sponsor, you've learned about the program, and now we're on to step 2, which is really just as simple. It's read the solicitation. There's so much good information in the solicitation. It really just is, you just got to read it. There's no trick there. So yeah, that's just step 2, is taking the time to just read the solicitation front to back. If you have any questions, asking those questions, talking to colleagues about what you're reading, that sort of thing. And then step 3 is, we've gone through the solicitation, but you still want a little bit more information. You maybe have some questions. Where do you even begin to ask those questions? A lot of programs have webinars, and I will say not all programs have a webinar, but when they're available, they're incredibly helpful. Typically, they'll follow a similar format where the program manager will discuss the program, and then there'll be time for Q&A. That Q&A section is incredibly helpful for competitive intelligence for 2 reasons. 1, you can ask the question, which is really great, and get an answer that you might not be able to find, in the solicitation. But 2, if you're paying attention, you can also hear other questions and the answers. Maybe that'll give you some insight into who your competition is, or at least it'll help you better understand the types of things other, people that want to submit are thinking about. So it's just a great resource for both, getting your questions answered and then gaining some intelligence about the program and who your competition might be. And the beautiful thing about these webinars is if you can't attend live, oftentimes they're recorded. That means you can't really ask a question, but you can still get the information. And they even have like the slides available, transcripts available. So you don't have to sit through an entire hour. You can make this work for you in any way to just get that information from that webinar. And then I want to note a little bit of like a bonus step since we're here today, and that is the upcoming 2021-2022 KE-DC Leadership Workshop Series. And so this series is going to, help faculty increase their experience and understanding of the federal landscape. And if you are interested in this, the application portal is open on our InfoReady site. And so that's right here on the left side of the screen, and you'll get these slides, it'll be there. The deadline is this Thursday. So if you are interested, the time to act is now. And Haley Bohal is on the call. She's managing this. And so if you have any questions, she will happily answer them. All right, and so now we're getting to my favorite step, which is analyzing previous awards. So you've looked at the sponsor, you've looked at the program, you've read the solicitation, you've watched some webinars, maybe you've even gone to DC, had some great conversations, but you still have some questions. So if you still have questions, this is where we'll get into exactly how you can use data to help answer some of those questions, as Keith was talking about finding trends to inform your strategy. And so, like I said, I know this might sound like overkill, but it really isn't. If you invest this time up front, you've done it. You don't have to do it every single year. You need to have this baseline of knowledge that'll help you kind of know about the program, know what they're looking for. And so as you want to start analyzing previous awards, your first step really is to gather data. And I've linked in the slides, which you'll receive on the left-hand side, some of the databases for sponsors that make it really easy to look at their previous awards. And then for those sponsors, it's a little bit more complex. We've just added some notes about best practices. So for the DoD, there's no database for DoD programming, but if you are looking at a specific program and you search like Google News, there's press releases about awardees, and that'll give you all the information that you need. For NASA, they do have a database. I will say it's not my favorite database. And so if you're kind of scratching your head as you go through it, you're not alone. I would recommend looking at the program pages, because at the bottom of those program pages, there's typically a history of funding for the program. That's a much easier way to get at the data. So again, if you have any questions, if you're going out to gather data and you run into some roadblocks, come back to these slides. If it's not there, you can email us. And then when you go into a database, you might be wondering, like, well, what information do I pull? Because there's going to be a ton of information there. So I've just added like the typical headers all put into an Excel sheet so that you don't have an overwhelming amount of information. And so these headers will walk through exactly how you can use the trends you'll find by pulling this information over the next couple of slides. All right, so after you download your data, you're looking at it, you might be wondering, well, how many awards, does this program award each cycle? And really you can look at the year column that you'd have in that Excel. And when you read the solicitation, it'll tell you how many awards they anticipate they're going to fund, but you can look and see what they realistically fund. And, some of the trends you might be looking for is the average number of awards. Is that average number increasing year to year? Is the program possibly growing? Is it decreasing year to year? Is there potential, decline of the program? So things to be aware of, just so you know what you can realistically expect in terms of your possibility for getting an award. You may also be wondering, well, how much funding might I receive? What's a realistic budget? And of course, again, you've read the solicitation, so you know that it'll tell you the max amount they'll award. But when you look at past awards, you can actually see what they really award. And so let's say you're looking at a program, you're reading the solicitation, and it says they will fund up to $1 million. And then you pull the past awards and you see that no one's ever gotten more than $750,000. That gives you an idea that maybe $750,000 is a more realistic number for funding. And that, just think about that as you're building out your budget and kind of making sure you set these realistic expectations in terms of the funding you might expect. Other questions we get a lot that you can find through awardee analysis are around institutions that have won in the past. And so when you're looking at this, looking at the institutions that have won, you'll want to see if there's institutions that consistently perform well. Do you see that, ASU has 10 awards in this program? And then, that's a good thing to know. If it's not ASU that's consistently performing well, look at the features of those institutions and determine, what is it about those institutions that's helping them win? Does ASU have similar features that you can highlight? Do you have contacts at those institutions? Can you reach out and ask your colleague, like, hey, I'm looking at this program. I see your institution has won a few times. Do you have any tips, information, strategies? Doesn't hurt to ask. And then you'll really want to start to think, like, how do those institutions consistently perform well? And how can you mimic their success? If you're looking at a program, and let's say it's like a large NIH program, and you see that medical institutions are consistently winning this award, that does not mean you shouldn't apply for it, but it might inform your teaming and your partnership to say, okay, maybe I need a medical institution as a partner to be competitive in this program. So another question that we get asked a lot is, like, where are the awardees located? And I'll say this is not always relevant. You'll see high concentrations of awards located where large R1 institutions are, right? That makes sense. However, if you're looking at a program and you can focus on geographic discriminators, then it's worth, highlighting. And so let's say you're looking at maybe some social science research and the population demographics of Arizona or Phoenix are different than, the populations that have previously been funded. That's worth highlighting as a geographic discriminator. If you're doing research on the environment and the environments they've funded, the sponsors funded up until this point have all been wetland environments, and the research would be dramatically different if it was conducted in a desert environment. Maybe that's worth highlighting. So again, if you can really see that ASU's location offers a geographic discriminator that's unique, interesting, worth exploring, then it's worth including in your proposal. All right, so the next step is a PI analysis, and this is really just looking at who has won in the past, not the institution, but the actual PI. And none of this is meant to discourage application in any way, but it is meant to give you an idea of, who they typically fund. Are they typically funding full professors, associate assistant professors? What experience does a PI have based on the data? How many previous awards do they have from the sponsor? How many publications do they have in a particular topic? What did the awardee's CV look like? How does yours compare? Again, not meant to discourage you from applying, just meant to give you an idea of who they're typically funding. As Keith said earlier, this is all about short-term and long-range planning. And so if an opportunity is not a good fit for you in where you're at in your career today, maybe it's a good fit 2 years, 3 years, so on and so forth. and then topic analysis. So when you read the solicitation and you read about the program, it'll have a broad topic that it's funding, right? It'll have an objective. But when you start to look at the previous awards, you can see if a program favors certain topics, certain like subtopics, and you'll want to, look if they are favoring topics, does your proposal align with those favored topics? If so, does what you're proposing go beyond what they've previously funded? And then if your proposal doesn't align with their favored topics, that's not like a don't apply. That's just you need to highlight how you're still going to advance the program goals. And so just to put this into a little bit of context, if you're looking at a program that funds research on fruit, which I know this is a silly example, but it just really makes it easy to understand, and you're doing research on oranges, that's a fruit. Let's say the oranges are their favorite topic. So you're doing research in exactly what they want to fund. That's great. If you're researching apples, that's okay too. It's still a fruit, but you have to start to emphasize that, yes, I know you typically fund orange research. I'm over here doing apples, and this is still a fruit. I'm still going to advance your program. I'm still going to help you meet your mission, your vision, your goals as a sponsor. That's kind of what you want to do with this topic analysis. All right, and then teaming. This is a great, looking at previous awards is a great way to figure out how you can start to form your team. And so what's the average team size? What should you consider when you form a team? Are the teams interdisciplinary? How many team members are internal to the lead institution? How many are external? How many external partners do they have? Are they industry partners, national labs, community organizations? All kinds of different partners can be included. And if you look at the trends of teams that have been awarded, you'll get an idea of what kind of works in terms of what the program's looking to fund. And of course, how are students involved? There's a lot of students on campus, and how you want to start involving them in your proposal, how you want to help, have them help you with your research. These are things you can find by looking at previous awards and what they've done. All right, so then our fifth step is all about human intelligence. And this is, talking to faculty who have submitted before. So we've talked about this a little bit with the human intelligence, and I will say it is really nerve-wracking to reach out to people and ask them to give you advice. I understand that because we do it on our team, and it's nerve-wracking for us. And so I know this is hard to do, but it's completely worth it. There is so much information that, yes, you'll get from these databases, you'll get from researching, but talking to people, you're going to get stuff that you just never would find otherwise. And so if you want to talk to faculty at ASU, we've included some links at the bottom that can help you find previous proposals. So the analytics.research.asu.edu is the KE Analytics team's website, and it has the listings of all ASU proposals and awards. So you can look for faculty who have submitted proposals or been awarded in a program you're looking at. And don't discount if they weren't awarded. That's fine. They're still going to have information about the program and their process and their proposal review notes that they may be willing to share with you. And then if it's a limited submission opportunity, you can look at the ASU InfoReady site for information about those previous applicants. And like I said, I know it's nerve-wracking, but oftentimes when you reach out to people, they're pretty willing to share. And then we've just included 4 questions that you might ask. They're very open, they're very kind of broad, so that you're not sending the person in a certain direction to answer a question. You really just want any advice they have in any kind of thing they're thinking of versus them answering a specific thing you're already thinking of. Maybe the thing you're thinking of is important. Maybe there's something else you should be thinking about as well. So these 4 questions are just really broad, kind of get the conversation started. All right, and with that, I will pass it off to Haley, who will talk about our 6th step, the importance of review.
Thank you, Jamie. So this is the 6th step, like Jamie said, and this is the growing your competitiveness in review. This is the point of the preparation process, that you understand what the sponsor is looking for and what they have awarded in the past and what they want to award in the future. This is now the part where you are ready to prepare and write your proposal. And just as those preliminary steps in preparation make your proposal stronger, a thorough review of your ideas and of your proposal will make it more competitive. So one of those key elements to review is understanding who is actually going to be reviewing your proposal. What kind of mechanism does the sponsor use? They might use individual reviewers or group reviewers. Each funding agency uses a different process. Understanding how your proposal will be reviewed should influence your strategy and your response. Remember, proposal review does not necessarily mean the same thing as group peer review. And some sponsors include different levels of agency staff as part of the review process. Most federal agencies either use a group or individual review sessions with peer reviewers, but not every agency. And keep in mind, smaller agencies like philanthropic organizations and foundations use external reviewers and maybe non-technical staff or board members. They also might use subject matter experts and other external reviewers to their agency. Okay, so how do you know that your idea is good? Of course, you want to review it yourself and you want to have others review it. One way to have your proposal reviewed is through color team reviews. This early planning and allowing ample time for review will help ensure your proposal is responsive and competitive. These are an accepted industry practice and a logistical way to prepare and review your proposal. The review system has multiple colors, including blue, black, green, pink, red, gold, and white. They're endless. Each review and color system represents increasing levels of maturity. Not every proposal or situation goes through the entire spectrum of colors, but applying the logistical process to your timeline and situation best prepares your proposal for submission. The two most applicable in every situation are the pink and red team reviews. Pink team reviews, the storyboard and the mock-up for confirming your solution is set and to validate your proposal strategy. The red team reviews a final proposal draft and also predicts how the customer or the sponsor will score your proposal. I've included lots of resources and links to more information about the color-coded reviews in the slides, so you can reference those in the future. Another way to better understand the review process is to participate and serve as a reviewer. Sponsors are constantly in need of reviewers. They need qualified reviewers to ensure the peer review system works. Your experience and up-to-date knowledge enables you to provide helpful advice and reviews. In addition to the inherent value of serving in the research community, reviewers directly benefit from reviewing and serving on panels. You receive firsthand knowledge of the process, and you also get to see what other proposal submissions look like, learning about the common problems and what strategies make your proposal strong. Each agency, of course, has different rules about being a reviewer and different processes for becoming a reviewer. For NSF, NIH, and NEH, it's a simple online form or an email nomination process. I've also included in the slides for your reference later other ways to become a reviewer for these agencies, so you can easily access those. One program I'd like to point out for early career researchers is the NIH Early Career Reviewer Program. This program aims to help early career scientists become more competitive and also gives you the firsthand experience that you need. Here at ASU, if you'd like to review internally, we always have limited submissions opportunities for review. We ask for volunteers from all faculty levels. It's completely volunteer basis, and we welcome all disciplines. If you have any interest, you can email us. We'll put you on the reviewer list. So this was the 6th step in growing your competitiveness. Understanding what a sponsor has awarded in the past or wants to award in the future can give your proposal a competitive edge. Preparing your proposal with ample time to allow for strategic review helps ensure your proposal is the best it can be. We're happy to answer any sort of questions you might have or comments. I would like to highlight that we're opening office hours next week for this topic. We're happy to walk through a specific situation that you have interest in or answer any detailed questions at that time, but we welcome questions now also. Oh, and also our further proposal development workshops are available. Number 3 is next, finding funding opportunities. That's September 28th. Do we have any questions? We're happy to address them in the chat or live. If you want to unmute yourself. You know that's quite a bit of content to go through. And I know that Jamie and I and Keith have provided additional resources for you to look at when these slides are sent out, so you can dig in further and then come back to our office hours to talk with us about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, come to those office hours. We have some questions for you, guiding questions that will be included in the slides and the recording when we send that out to everybody who has registered for this. And we're looking forward to you coming and helping you actively working on your research. We have a question in the chat. Anything to note regarding resubmissions versus changing mechanisms or sponsors?
I think that has to do with the pivoting your message that Quinn will do, which I think is PDW4. Sorry, watch PDW4.
And so what Faye is saying is we have an actual presentation about pivoting your message and resubmitting and changing based on sponsor feedback and things. So it's PDW4, which is on, I can give you an actual date here. Maybe October 19th. Oh, and a link, perfect. Well, if you come live, we will sing you happy birthday, or I will sing you happy birthday. Won't guarantee my colleagues will join, but.
And to ensure that you get all the recording and the slides, make sure you have registered for these workshops. I try and grab everyone's name, but I'm not able to track everyone down. So please register and we'll get these slides sent out to you. The office hours are 10 days from today. That will give you ample time to review the slides and the recording.
Thank you, everybody.